Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 10th, 2021. The 10 a.m. session, there is no public testimony during the review session. The following items are to be adjourned or requested adjournments. Item number 1, 2016-4463 BZ, 6202 14th Avenue, Brooklyn. Item number 2, 2019-276A, 15 Stewart Lane, Queens. Item number 3, 2020-45 BZ and 127-15 BZ, 135-35 Northern Boulevard, Queens. These following items are postponed for improper service. Item number 4, 2019-255A, 621 Alonzo Road, Queens. Item number 5, 2017-269 BZ, 65 Grasmere Avenue, Staten Island. The following are decision items. Item number 6, 18912 BZ, 98 Montague Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, this one we need to defer decision again because they still have not resolved their very large ECB violations. And I just want to remind them that the applicant, this closed in December 2020, so we can't keep dragging this on. They need to resolve this quickly, or we could decide to dismiss with that for lack of prosecution. It was closed after one hearing, and it's an extension of time to complete construction. So enough already. Pay the violations and let's move on. Okay, go ahead.
Item number 7, 2019-68A, 235 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Okay. Okay, there was actually nothing to submit on this, but there was a conditional fire department letter of no objection, which council should note should be part of the resolution. And if council needs a cut and paste copy of it, I can forward that to them. Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion to grant on that condition.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Item number 8, 2019-195A, 191 Industrial Loop, Staten Island.
Similarly, there was nothing that the applicant needed to submit on this, but we were waiting for DEP sign off, and we got DEP conditional sign off, which again should become part of the resolution. And there's also a similar fire department conditional letter of no objection that should be part of the resolution. So I'd like to make a motion to grant on those two conditions. Sets of
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Item number 9, 2016-4340 BZ, 13102 40th Road, Queens.
There was nothing to submit and no conditions on this. Just one second. I just want to get there. Okay, yeah, there was nothing to submit and no open seeker issues. So I'd like to make a motion to grant.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Items granted. Item number 10, 2020 78 and 79A, 90 and 92 Elm Street, Staten Island.
Okay, again, there was no submission on this and no conditions. So I'd like to make a motion to grant.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Shetta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
The following item has requested withdrawal. Item number 11, 2019-196 BZ, 41 East 20th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, so I don't see any objection. This was for 7336, which probably ended up closing, unfortunately. Or maybe it never opened, not sure. Anyway, so a motion to grant their withdrawal request.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Appeals calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 12, 2019-190A, 40-17, 28th Avenue, Queens.
Okay. And we move this to the beginning because this is a DOB case, so we always put those on Monday morning. Just a second. Okay, DOB and DOT review are ongoing with this proposed parking garage. But the question before this board was actually whether DOB has the authority to consider safety concerns in its plan reviews. I believe the commissioners responded to that question at the first and second hearings, and the answer, I think, universally was yes. So we didn't close the hearing the last time because we believed we could be of service in resolving the open issues and pushing the project to a reasonable conclusion by setting a schedule for DOB and the appellant to work together quickly. And indeed, BSA's involvement in the process does seem to have done some good because there were, as outlined in DOB's letter, at least 20 meetings and communications between DOB, DOT, and the architect, and many open issues about the building were resolved. BSA was CC'd on all or most emails so could monitor the progress. So that really was a lot of progress done in approximately 8 weeks. If there is now an impasse because DOT requests information that appellant doesn't want to provide, then I don't think really it's for BSA to intervene on that account. And I have to say that given the clear responses from DOB and DOT to the applicant about the safety concerns and the methodology that needs to be used to determine the solution, I was actually rather surprised to read appellant's counsel's letter that continues to claim that they are being given no direction or explanations for DOB to approve the project as currently drawn. I dare say it is likely costing more to have a lawyer write such letters about why the appellant shouldn't have to conduct the studies than to just do the study itself, especially when you add the cost of sitting on an empty site. Either do those studies as requested or come up with a better architectural solution that is more persuasive. DOT mentioned a ramp that doubles as a queuing lane, or reduce the number of parking spaces in the building to accessory only, which is 46 accessory spaces, while 150 are proposed. DOT was clear that some of the concerns, or maybe even most of the concerns, have to do with this being a public parking garage. So how do you predict the utilization rates, because utilization rates are based on a known occupancy, but for a public parking garage, you'd have to do kind of a broader understanding of how much parking is needed in the area or something, right? The owner has to decide really what it wants. Does it want an expansive first floor retail area or access to a 150 space parking garage? One of those will have to give on this relatively small lot that is not even being built to its property lines at the first floor. Which floor would be the point of proper access to the 4 subcellar parking garage? I mean, that's what's really going on here. This is a very small building, but it has 4 subcellars. So it seems like the sort of the business concept was to create a profit-making 150 space public parking garage, and while you're at it, an above ground commercial building. And so if you want to do all of those things, something has to give in order to make all of those things work. The last plan submission we have was on March 10th for drawings of an unknown submission date. I don't know whether those are the latest. I know we scoured around, but I don't know if that was the latest submission to DOB or DOT. And I do want to add that DOT's expressed concerns about the throughput with the elevators. and the potential for traffic to queue into the street are identical to those this board observed at the very first hearing in August, and what led to the first design modification that we later saw in February. But I do remember that we were not necessarily persuaded that the design we saw in February was the solution, but instead decided that DOB and the architect should work out the solution together. And I know at the first hearing, I discussed this same issue being addressed very successfully with a parking garage in Queens that used a turntable operation with a very rapid throughput. This was just one example of technology stepping in to respond to reasonable concerns about neighborhood safety and circulation. I'm guessing there are other solutions, but certainly architecture can address that as well, rather than necessarily relying on technology. So I have to pose this question to the appellant, which is really both the owner and the architect. Does it want BSA to remain in the picture to ensure the frequent meetings and regular exchange with DOB and DOT that we have observed in the past, what turns out to be 9 weeks? If yes, then the appellant really does need to cooperate and respond to DOT's requests. Otherwise, it seems like we'll be here indefinitely, and I don't see the point. So Vice Chair Shanda?
Madam Chair, I agree with your first statement and everything that you have said so far. I think the review that was before us was, did DOB have the right to raise the safety concern as an issue and therefore object? And I think we have all agreed to it. And the fact that they're moving forward and DOB, as part of its past practices, has engaged DOT in assisting them in addressing with their expert advice on this. And as you mentioned, it's very consistent with what the board has said. I really don't see why we should be involved in this anymore, and we should close this out and let DOT, DOB, and the property owner resolve it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ali Brown.
I agree with the two of you. I feel that the BSA has already indicated that it would be supporting Department of Buildings, and therefore it really is the wise thing to do for the appellant to actually work with DOB to ensure that there will be pedestrian as well as user safety regarding this garage. And so to get to the point where they've made so much progress with their design, but are just balking at providing a queuing analysis, I don't even understand it, because it's just going to be costing them more money fighting it than to actually provide the study and be done with it. So I'm puzzled.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you. Commissioner Shetta.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with what's been said so far from my board members. In addition to that, I would like to thank DOB. And on previous cases, I was kind of like aggressive against them, but this is the kind of a case that I would praise what they did too much. They went actually far and beyond. Thank you so much for doing that, for catching this and continue that kind of work. On the applicant side, I'm like shocked. I'm just gonna read from the letter dated April 8th by the applicants, when he says that it is the responsibility of the DOB to show that an unsafe condition exists before they can consider utilizing such and such. This is not the way the entire city system works. When an engineer or an applicant applies for something, the burden of proving that thing is going to work is not the duty of the city. It is if a plan examiner is skeptical about, let's say, a structural plan, there is one of the beams that he believes that it's gonna deflect more than what the code permits. He's not gonna grab a calculator and an engineering sheet and run the numbers for the applicants. No, simply he's gonna mark it, please submit calculations to justify that deflection of this beam does not exceed tolerated limits by such and such. Period. It's same exact thing here. DOB believes that there is a problem. They indicated this from the very beginning. The applicant didn't even buy this. The DOB went actually far and beyond and sent this to DOT to look at it and opine on it. And the opinion came back that they need to do study. They need to do something. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, be my guest. And I believe we should close and vote on this, if possible, yesterday.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. While I don't agree with a vote on Mother's Day, I do think that it's going to be 2 years from the DOB's determination that they're appealing shortly. That was in June, and they've been here since August of 2020. I anticipated that they'd be much more eager to get this resolved immediately as opposed to the back and forth. So I really like to hear from the applicant his intentions to move forward quickly and to follow the course, provide the DOB with what they request, and let's move on. If that's their intention, I'm a bit of a loss. I'm not sure what their intention is, and that's why I look forward to hearing from the applicant on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Move on.
Yep.
SOC calendar continued hearing items. Item number 13, 599-76BZ, 70-02, 72nd Place, Queens.
So I'd really like to compliment the applicant on a very clear photo essay that describes the compliances with the terms of the prior grant. It just took a couple of minutes to review, which I always look at as a sign of clarity and good organization. And it told the entire story with respect to the questions. The site was improved and looks much better. The block wall at the property line, though, that you do see in the photos on the kind of the right side of the building, that needs a coat of paint, so it should get a coat of paint. It also shows there are picnic tables set up. I'm just curious what that is. Is that picnic tables for the staff? There's lighting in the side. The lighting in the side yards were either removed or replaced with what are known as dark sky fixtures. So I don't think that that's an issue any longer. So I didn't have any other issues with this. Vice Chair Shanda.
Yes, I'm very satisfied with the application. I had gone on a site visit and things are greatly improved. Not that they were in that bad of a shape, but I really do appreciate everything that the applicant has done, and I would be ready to close and vote on it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Brown.
I'm also satisfied with the application.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Sheta.
I'm satisfied with the application the way it is, and I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. I'm satisfied with this application. I think their submission was responsive, and I'm eager to close.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Item number 14, 2110BZ, 2801 Roebling Avenue, the Bronx.
Wait a second. There was some confusion about the submission. I hope everybody saw the materials. So, okay, just 1 second. Okay. We had asked that they provide notice of hearing to the neighbors surrounding, which they did do, and we have proof. I didn't see as a response to that any written testimony. Maybe there'll be participants in the hearing, we don't know. photos actually show a very good sign that was installed at the entrance to the drive-through, which I think, and I think that the text should be our standard, since we've been saying very archaically, turn off your radio, and it's kind of like, what was a radio? So they actually wrote, please respect our neighbors, turn off sound systems, keep voices down. So I really like that sign. I think that should be become our go-to sign. So maybe we put that on a little administrative notice on the website or something to that effect. I was reading about that. I listen to the radio, but I don't even know if there are radios in cars anymore.
There are.
There are.
It's Sirius radio now.
Right. So that's the thing. It's not even really a radio. It's a stream thing that goes through your car. So it's okay. Anyway, the noise report indicates that ambient readings were taken during the day and are relatively high compared to the output of the speakers. However, this is a request to maintain the drive-through hours until 2 a.m. So there needs to be ambient readings for these types of hours. So it's not fair to compare against noisy daytime when you're open at 1 a.m. and it's still at 70 something or 60 something decibels. Okay. Understanding that there are no windows facing this lot. It's true that in the simple analysis, there are no windows actually facing the lot. However, there's not just a rear garden, which is lower than the fence, but at the second and third floors of that residence, there's a setback. So actually that image of a wall that's going all the way back or partly back isn't accurate because there's a setback. And they have a clear line of sight to the menu board, and that may even reach the windows. So the readings have to be taken to calculate impact to those receptors and also at midnight. So, that's kind of the problem whenever you look at these things in two-dimensional form, just in plan, you don't see what else is actually going on. But then when you have the advantage of an aerial imagery, you can see, oh, look at that. They're actually sitting on top of the menu board. So anyway, and then there's an elaborately prepared lumen spread, lights on, lights off study that shows very hot spill onto the residential property, which is a rather obvious result of the tall light pole and bright lighting that we discussed at the last hearing. The applicant proposes to replace those two light fixtures with new ones with shielding. I think this should be done now and new meter readings taken after the installation. But I also want to note that the high poles, which is perhaps the proposal to retain, will no doubt light the roof balconies and perhaps even the windows of the neighbors. So before those lights are ordered, the engineers really need to check the effects on those receptors, especially because we're talking about late night operations. I mean, it kind of would be different if it was only, well, it wouldn't be different because we have a strict no overflow rule on the lighting. But there was also in the sound study, there was a mention of the owner committing to not elevating the audio settings on the drive-through menu board beyond a level of 10. Because menu boards change and all of that stuff, 10 sounds like it's the highest level, So on some menu boards, 10 would be the top. On some, it would be, maybe it goes up to 40, So I'm not really sure what a level of 10 means. Surely there's a more scientific way of describing the output when it's set to 10, and that should be the commitment. And then last, then they also made a statement that their trash pickup is between the hours of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. So I'd like to have that be a condition. Let's just say trash pickup not earlier than 7 a.m. or later than 9 p.m. on weekdays and weekends too, obviously. So, or they should only be on weekdays because that's what they're being shown. So, okay. So Vice Chair Shanda.
I agree with your comments. I'm not sure I saw the landscaping details that was stated in the letter. I don't know if a plan was submitted which lays out the detailed landscaping, especially along the rear. I was looking for the photos. I was not sure if a new set of photos were submitted as part of the last submission. I was only able to download the photos that were submitted initially. So,
Okay, so let me just, you need to go to that's what I was saying. There was a confusion about how this was organized, and the submission was only corrected either Thursday or Friday. It's
Okay.
sitting in the folder called submission, which for the project manager, that is not how it should be labeled. It needs to be labeled the date of the submission, not in just a general folder called submission, because we'll never look at it, right?
okay.
You go into submission, you'll see those photos. And I don't remember whether there was a landscaping detail, because there's only a little bit of landscaping. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Nazar.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
that.
that's what I remember seeing, and I didn't think that was adequate enough. So I wasn't sure if it's in response to our current comments, or is it from the earlier drawings?
Well,
So
it
this
says
was
April
submitted
12th.
on April 19th. So that
Okay.
would have been the correct submission, more or less the correct submission date. 21st was the submission date.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, Commissioner Otley Brown.
I'm satisfied with them reaching out to the neighbors surrounding the Burger King to ensure that they have not been disturbed in the past. And I'm also satisfied with the installation of the landscaping in the rear corner. This case actually was before us a few years ago, and we had also requested that they reach out to the neighbors at that time, which they did, and we never got any information from the neighbors that this site was a bother to them. And so therefore, I'm inclined to support this application at this time.
Okay, fair. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was a different, was it a different restaurant? No, I remember it being like.
No, it's the same.
It was the
one.
same.
It's always been this Burger King, like for
Okay.
years and years. I used to pass this way all the time.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Sheta, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I still believe, because I did visit the site and I did look at the conditions there, I believe they need to do something about the lighting and the noise, unless we get like something in writing from the neighbors that they do not mind being exposed to some like extra lighting from the restaurant, in addition to some noise. But I'm not convinced with the analysis that they ran so far. I'm talking about the lighting and the noise. Like you mentioned, Chair, the noise analysis considered ambient, like ambient noise mostly during the daytime. Since they're going to be operating late night, I believe they should look into a wider band when it comes to noise. And they, at the end of the noise study, they kind of like left it to the operator that he's not gonna increase the output beyond this level. I'm not sure if they're gonna comply with that, and how can we ensure that compliance will be there all the time. The lighting, definitely something need to be done. Like I said, unless the neighbor agrees to get free lighting from the restaurant. That's a different story, but they need to get us something in writing, like I said. Other than that, I'm okay with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. I I'm not in love with this application. I think that the landscaping is a bit sparse. I also agree with Commissioner Sheta with regard, and you, Chair, with regard to would this ambient noise be at this level at night? But that all being said, notice was given to neighbors. I look, if they appear and today and they have something to say to the contrary, I don't know whether in the cost benefit analysis, whether it makes the most amount of sense to keep this applicant here if there aren't complaints about his use.
Right. Okay, thanks. Well, cost benefit analysis in terms of the BSA's need for maintaining space, we could do something like close it and then they resolve it during the interim between closing and voting. That's often a way that we approach it. My feeling, which I've expressed before, is that neighbors don't like to make waves, right? They live next door to these uses and they want to make sure they stay friendly, or they just get used to the uses because they're used to this idea that they have light on at 2 a.m. That they could read by, that kind of thing. They just get used to it. They install curtains, or like we saw in one application, the suggestion was to install sound curtains on the neighbor's windows, right? So, that kind of thing. And I always look at this in terms of, now we have a word for it, kind of this environmental justice issue, that the neighbors may not realize they have a voice. And we should just be sensitive to what it would be like for us to live next door. Or the exaggeration that I use is, if this use were on Park Avenue, those neighbors would not put up with it. So what would they do? What would they want other than to kill the business entirely, which we've certainly seen them try to do. So in the effort of trying to at least improve the quality of their lives, I don't think what we ask for is much. Putting up shielding, lowering the lights, that kind of thing is not actually much to ask of going businesses. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, move on.
Yeah.
New cases, item number 15, 28279 BZ, 840 Richmond Avenue, Staten Island.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends conditional approval, stating that the motion to approve with the condition that the lot is closed to vehicle and pedestrians when the restaurant is not open. So I'd like the applicant to speak to that, like putting up a chain or something like that. This application was filed just under 10 years after the expiration of the grant, which was in July 24th, 09, and it was filed on June 12th, 19. And the notice of comments was responded to just 2 weeks short of 1 year after its issuance. Usually we send a notice to dismiss after 1 year. So I just hope that won't reflect the schedule of responses to the board's directions on this case. The waiver requested under our rules should be section 1-07.3B3 Roman numeral 2. This should be corrected in the statement of facts. Our rules for this duration of lapse, for some strange reason, does not require proof of continuous use. Really, it needs to be corrected because that makes no sense. But I think we should see that anyway. So I would like them to provide proof of continuous use. I didn't find the 1989 BSA resolution in the file. There are multiple copies of the 2000 resolution. Those should be, we should only have one of the copies of the 2000 resolution in the folder, and we need the 1989 resolution. We also need, and one of the reasons multiple copies is a bad thing, is the commissioners read every single one of them and say, hey, wait a minute, haven't I read this already? And the answer is, yes, you have. It's exactly the same as the other one. We need photos keyed to the plans and with headings that demonstrate compliance with the terms of the grant. Could use that model of the photo essay that I mentioned earlier in the review session. The proposed plans must be at least as detailed as previously approved plans with dimensions, landscape details showing number and type of vegetation, heights and type of fencing. They need to show bumpers on the plans and provide information about lighting fixtures such as the type and height. Provide lumen spread to show no light spill onto residential properties. And I observed the light poles are high and the site is adjacent on 2 sides to houses. So likely there's light spill. Fencing and landscaping on the street fronts as shown in the photos looks in need of repair, replacement and tending. Landscaping is sparse in areas and bumpers are displaced and should be properly installed. And by the way, these are really old photos, 2 years old, so provide updates. And those were my comments. Okay, Vice Chair Shonda.
I had similar comments, so I wouldn't repeat them. I think the applicant also needs to provide lumen study and a detailed landscaping plan, and the site plan does not provide the dimensions of the landscape areas, the driveway aisles width, which were there in the previously approved plan. So those need to be shown. That also a way to show it's complying with the prior approved plans. You know, I have to say, since all of last year, there was a recent photo that was submitted, and it was interesting if you do see it when you you know, the parking space has not been used because the restaurant was not open because of the last year's pandemic situation. So I'm quite sympathetic to the fact that lack of business for this particular user has been heavy, is likely to be heavy, and I would hope that we will give the applicant the time to correct these correct these situations, and minimize the amount of time that they are at the BSA maybe through conditional or some kind of things like that.
I think this has been here since 2019, right? They submitted in June 2019, so it's been here for 2 years, right? So they received their notice of comments in July of 2019 and didn't respond until last year. So something else is going on that's unrelated to the pandemic.
Okay.
There was no response at all. It was crickets for an entire year. And then maybe they got a phone call and that's why they responded a year later, but maybe something happened and they responded a year later. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Commissioner Otley Brown.
I agree with the previous comments concerning the need for proof of continuous use, filling in the gaps in the arbor vitae for the landscaping, fixing cracks in the pavement and the parking lot, and properly positioning the concrete wheel stops at the head of parking spaces. And I don't know if this was mentioned, but the statement of facts says that this is a self-parking facility, but the conditions of the grant are to have attended parking on Friday and Saturday. So they should address whether or not they are in compliance with those previous conditions.
Thank you. Thank you for picking that up. Okay. Just 1 second. Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with all the comments regarding the need for luminous spread, fixing the pavement, the landscaping, and in addition to the attended parking during Friday and Saturday. I believe that I saw on the landscaping, I believe they mentioned that the planting is like 5 feet tall. I'm not sure if we're okay with 5 feet tall. I believe they need to provide taller than 5 feet. Other than that, I have nothing else to add.
The landscaping is already installed, right? So it's
I understand.
Right. So a tree grows how maybe it was supposed to achieve 8 feet, but then you don't have ideal conditions, so it only rose to 5 feet. You know, that has to do with the size of the planting bed. That's why I'm always promoting like a 5-foot planting bed or bigger, because now you have a tree ball that can handle a tall tree. But when it's only a 3-foot planting bed, it's stuck there, it's root bound, and that's as far as it's going to go. So that, you know, that's kind of learned by doing, is all I can say. And the other also has to do with tree trimming. If you never trim the trees, they don't grow. They need, just like your hair does pretty badly if it doesn't get trimmed. Same for trees, oddly.
Since this is expired in 1999, and this is kind of, for me, I feel like this is a reinstatement of a variance that lapsed. Do they need to address serious loss if we do not reinstate the variance? Is that something that's needed?
So the serious loss concept is in our rules for, and bizarrely doesn't apply to these long lapses. At the commissioner's discretion, we can ask them that, but that's one reason why we talk about continuous use, right? So in some of the other rules, it's a combination of serious loss and continuous use, right? Those two together, and it's just to address that, which they can do. But of course, it's sort of self-explanatory. If you're showing continuous use for the last 10 years, then the serious loss is fairly obvious. You could just have a sentence that says, we've been operating for the last 36 years or whatever it is, continuously. Obviously, the loss would be beyond serious. I mean, that's called shutting down a business and like taking your pencils and going home, basically. All that's left. You could only probably afford your pencils to take home if you still have any.
Okay. I don't mean to give them a hard time. I know that they got enough because of the conditions that are there for more than a year and a half now, but I was curious whether we need to address something like that.
Right, well, it's not in our rules, and it's just a sentence to add, so they could add it. It's not,
Okay.
it's obvious, assuming they can prove continuous use.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the statements that were made by the other board members and don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right.
Okay, this concludes the public review session. And we will now commence with the public hearing. The first item up is appeals calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 12, 2019-190A, 40-17, 28th Avenue, Queens.
Okay. There are three people who dialed in on this. We don't know if they're part of the team, or this is about team members calling in. And if you're one of the team members, then raise your Zoom hand with *9. Again, this is 41-17 28th Avenue in Queens, only team members.
Well, the architect is there. I could see the
Well,
architect.
okay, but no, I mean a caller.
Oh.
I see 3 phone numbers. That's why I'm asking.
Mr. Noriega is here. Who's the
I don't believe anybody else should be joining us. It should just be
okay.
me and Antonio.
Where's DOB?
Right, where's DOB? Who's if DOB is on the call, maybe we don't recognize your name, please raise your hand if you're on the Zoom call. *9 if you called in, otherwise a Zoom hand. There's
I
one.
don't see anybody. Let me see. Okay.
Hi, I see Mr.
And please press *6 to unmute.
That person, the 512 number that's related to this project. Okay. Can the person with the last 3 digits, 512, oh, there we see Michael Zoltan. Good, okay. The person with their hand up who's a 512, last 3 digits, can you identify yourself, unmute with *6? Hi, please identify yourself.
This is Felicia Miller, but I believe Michael Zoltan's on for the Department
Oh,
of
yes,
Buildings.
hi. Okay, hi, Felicia.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't have to be sworn in. So Mr. Noriega, do you want to, I don't know, how you want to do this, Madam Chair?
What?
Mr.
Yeah,
Noriega?
well, so, yeah, let's just start with Mr. Noriega. They're the appellants, right?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Noriega. I'm here from Sheldon Nobel. I'm joined by Antonio Di Aronzo, the architect on the project. We listened to this morning's review session and we have a couple comments. First, I want to address a couple of statements that were made. And it appears to be one of the issues raised by DOT as well. The fact that this is a public garage versus an accessory garage and the number of spaces may not be appropriate. But the point being is 150 spaces is as of right in this area. To limit it would be contrary to zoning. That's what is allowed. And further, accessory parking garages are also allowed to be 150 spaces. The calling this public parking versus accessory parking is really no different other than who owns it in the end, if it can be a separate entity or if it's owned by the building and still can charge for parking, it would just be called accessory rather than public. So on those two things, I don't think that should be a relevant issue as far as what we're dealing with DOB and DOT. And on that,
Can I just
go ahead.
interrupt right there? So that's not actually true because this board deals with accessory parking garages all the time. And one of the things that is done in the traffic analysis is we look at trip utilization rates. And when we know that it's an accessory parking garage, we know who the users are. And so based on DOT data, we know, for example, what the utilization rate is of an ambulatory care facility or of an office building specifically, and how many of the occupants are actually going to drive. And very often we'll say, oh, look, the zoning resolution requires 240 spaces, but the reality of utilization rates is that only 75 of them will be used. So now DOT's analysis will be based on whatever kind of impact on the roadways of 75 trips, or let's say round trips or something per day, rather than 250 round trips per day. So it's an inaccurate statement that you're saying, because when it's a public parking garage, the utilization rates are not known unless you look at a much broader kind of area-wide usage of public parking garages. So sorry, need to correct you there.
Madam Chair, correct me if I'm wrong on this. For everything you just discussed, that's for discretionary actions. Is that correct? Because what I'm trying to present is this is an as of right development scenario.
We know.
So a traffic analysis shouldn't be necessary to begin with because of that. This is something that the zoning resolution clearly lays out for how many spaces. Now, if we were to exceed that, we would no longer be discretion, or as of right, we would be in a discretionary action requiring some sort of special permit to exceed 150 cars. And then, yes, I would 100% agree that we need these sort of traffic analyses and whatnot. But what you're describing sounds like required parking calculations, which are separate. So there are separate sections for required parking versus permissible parking when it's considered accessory. And permissive accessory parking can go up to 150 spaces. So we're looking at the same sort of thing, and there's nothing that in the zoning resolution that prohibits these spaces from being rented in the same manner, with the exception of residential uses, which is not the case here. So based on the use and number, I don't think that should be relevant to the discussion. This application was brought simply because the Department of Buildings demanded a certain number of queuing spaces, like reservoir spaces, whatever they're being called. And we do not agree that those should be required. And that's been the question ever since. And this job was actually filed in 2017. So we're coming up on 4 years of working on this. And this has gone back and forth with DOB, this exact issue for those 4 years, is whether or not we are required to have queuing spaces and whether or not they have the authority to have require the queuing spaces. We still believe that that's not the case, particularly because the the sections that the DOB have relied on require that it's not covered by law, and it is covered by law. We have very clear sections in the zoning resolution when these sort of things are required, and we do not meet those standards. And particularly with in regards to parking, the whole point of the zoning resolution as far as parking is concerned, the general purpose section was actually cited by the Department of Buildings for the language that it's to protect the public health, safety, general welfare, but that section specifically says it's to reduce traffic congestion caused by parking on the streets and to prevent substantial amounts of traffic from circulating and parking on the residential streets surrounding the commercial centers. The whole point of the parking is to get people off of the streets. And what we're saying here is to, I don't know, reduce the parking number or to reduce the size of this facility. And that's just not the case. And I'll let Antonio touch on a lot of what's happening as far as the back and forth with DOB. I don't think we have any opposition to doing a study necessarily, although we don't agree that it should be necessary. But the way it's phrased, it's not that this is the end of the line. We don't know for sure that this is going to be the end of it. This has been a moving target since August of 2017. The requirements keep changing, and now we have a request for an analysis to determine whether or not this is sufficient. We may not need to do anything. We may need to do something else, but we don't know because this keeps moving. It's just a moving target. We don't know where this is going to end, and that's why we came to the board to begin with, and it keeps moving, and we don't have any path forward, essentially.
Oh, so you do have a path forward. The point is this: DOT is asking for a study because it's their position, which is clearly outlined, and DOB has echoed it, and this board has echoed it, that it doesn't know, based on the information provided so far about the technology of the elevator, which can only one of the elevators can be used to take people down, and one elevator is used to take people up because of the layout, right? DOT doesn't, and DOB don't know whether the throughput on the elevators is fast enough to prevent building up of queues into the street. That is the question. And so it's asking, because it doesn't know what the utilization rates are, it's asking for some kind of an analysis that will determine whether there will be queuing into the street. If the study determines there will be queuing into the street, the answer is pretty obvious. This doesn't work. You have to come up with a better, don't interrupt. You have to come up with a better solution. If the answer is there won't be queuing on the street, yay, you proved it. Right? So that's why I said in the review session, there are lots of ways of solving this problem. DOT has mentioned it. We've seen many parking garages. They have ramps. The ramps are, and I'm not saying it's a great solution for this very small building, but ramps automatically provide the interior queuing that's needed to prevent queuing into the streets. So that's one. Then there may be technological solutions. Then there may be other kinds of architectural solutions. For example, I know that the design is very much sort of married to, and it's been in existence a long time, being an alternate setback building and so on. But one of the issues is that the ground floor is not built full. And so that's part of your problem as well, right? So there are a lot of different ways to skin this. And so the answer is you don't do a study unless you want to find out what the answers are to the study. You don't do a study just to paper things. You do a study to find out how to address things, and that's what they're asking, right? But you could solve it potentially another way. And so it isn't a moving target. It hasn't been a moving target since we got here, right? Since the BSA has been involved, the instructions have been very clear. And we've endeavored to participate in moving this forward. What I do understand from the testimony of Mr. D'Alonso the last time, which we didn't know before, was that it's been taking forever up until then to have these meetings with DOB so everything gets drawn out. In the last 9 weeks, there have been many, many communications. And so you can't say it's being drawn out. Instead, what we're trying to do is find a solution that actually works. Okay, so I don't think what you're saying, I think what you're saying is very dated. you keep dating back to old discussions. You need to move on. You need to move forward into the new discussions, okay? Let's hear from Mr. D'Oronzo, who's the boots on the ground here anyway, so go ahead.
How are you to all? Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, and to all the commissioners. My main concern here is, you're right, BSA has helped moving the process along. I wish DOB and TA, because the TA has been already involved once in this process. We are a BSA, obviously, because we went to TA once. I have to sort of reiterate the fact that this is a moving target, and I'll tell you why. Once BSA kindly sort of gave us all a call to action last time, we did have a number of meetings and communications. You must have noticed that there have been, and I say this also by prefacing that everyone at TA is nice and professional. However, there have been no design changes of substance to the building, to the layout. This office has presented a report which clearly outlines why the elevators and the laid out reservoir spaces provide everything and more than a regular traditional ramped garage would. Just because of the technology, I know you, Madam Chair, are a fan of technology, and you have brought up a couple of things. We are actually at the forefront of technology in not only in the way we move the cars, but also in the way transactions are endeavored. And so the point I want to make this morning is I actually offered TA to send a couple of people from my office to do the traffic analysis, because we didn't want to add more money and time to the process. It seems like I'm going to put it out there as an alternate solution to providing this traffic analysis by traffic engineers as opposed to my office. We even looked for raw data from traffic applications. We found some, but it seems like, even though you, Madam Chair, are all for technology, some outside of your commission are not. So I want to, I do side with the caution that every time a new agency steps in, there is a further one that is called upon. And so I would like to sort of make sure that the DOT is the last one, because we haven't made any design changes. We're wondering whether that is the reason why we have DOT on board, and then after DOT there would be, I don't know who else. So that is my main concern. It is true that initially the commissioner simply asked for reservoir spaces. We provided them. Then upon presenting the CCD1, he denied it. And that's the reason why we're here today. So had we known in 2017 or 18 or 19 or even 20 that a traffic analysis was needed, we would have provided it. So that is the concern that council was offering to you, and I'm offering to you in less than legal words. This is simply a concern on process, which I have to say, just like I said last time, when I thanked you and the commission for offering a path forward, but you understand that if you were to simply rely upon logic, this would be altogether less so, because I am presented, and I have presented to the owner, obviously, the need to produce a traffic analysis with further fees and months of work. in 2021, not in 2017, 18, 19, 20. So that is what the attorney was saying. This is what I'm offering this morning. It's just as a matter of, I mean, if I were a bystander and I were to observe the schedule of this process, I would say that something is amiss. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership in this process. I don't want you guys possibly to close this case and deny it. We're going to produce what needs to be produced. We want to simply request that you keep an eye on this process, because I think TA devolved its duties when you called upon them to have a number of meetings with us. In fact, the traffic analysis wasn't the first point of contention. It came up a few meetings in. So this is why we're here today, and this is why I am worried still that this is a moving target once again, because we haven't, aside from adding markings on the ground and a few signs, there has been no request to make any design changes by TA. There has been no real objection to the design in terms of safety. We are looking for a safety issue. As it stands, we are looking for a safety issue. Now, TA has said, how do we know that people are not going to cross the sidewalk? That's basically the safety issue that is proffered. So we need to, it seems like we need to prove that there is no issue, because nobody to date has offered an issue or presented one. So I just want to reiterate at the end that it doesn't seem like we have a choice but to do this traffic analysis, and we will provide. I will give the owner the news, and so, but that's where these words come from, and that's basically all I have to say. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you. Well, let's hear from, well, actually, I just want to respond to this a little bit, because I'm a little confused by some of what you say. And I do feel the pain of a project that never seems to go away. I've experienced those projects that seem to be a lifetime project. I mean, famously, architects work on projects that last 30 years for some reason. So maybe this will be the one that you remember and tell the apprentices in the office kind of thing. But from the beginning, I can't speak for what happened before you came to the BSA, but the commissioners expressed their concerns about the safety that DOB was expressing right at the beginning. That seemed as if the location at the time the elevator was forward, right? It seemed as if with the elevator forward, you would have cars lining up, blocking the sidewalk, turning into the street, and who knows how many would pile up as they're waiting. So the discussion about reservoir, whether it applies or it doesn't apply, seemed like a reasonable approach for DOB to be going to say you need more on-site waiting space, whether you call it a reservoir technically, or whether you call it just a place where you put cars. That seemed like a reasonable response. The floor plate of the first floor doesn't allow for much of a reservoir area as it was. And in addition, you had these issues of whether they can be outside or whether they can be inside, whether they can make the turn, all of those things, right? So there was discussion among the commissioners on that first hearing, you need to change the drawings, right? And so among the discussions was, see what happens if you move the elevators back, right? But that's with us drawing in the air. Like we're not sitting there with a pencil and actually figuring this out. That's a suggestion. See what happens if you move it back. So you moved it back, and it only ended up creating a few more spaces. And in the raw view, it was 4 or it was either 6 or 8 spaces, but in the reality, if a car coming out of the elevator needs to get out, you can't have cars lining up to get in there. So you couldn't use any of the spaces that block that second elevator. That's just kind of logical. So, that concern was expressed at the last hearing as potentially an issue. And then we said, but you know what? We're not the agency that grants the permit or the final approval. Why don't you work this out with DOB, right? So to say that it looks like an agency is looking for a problem. The BSA and DOB and DOT have an enormous amount of experience with parking garages, so they know where the problems are. We know what happens when there's no place for the cars to go. We see it, right? And so but the concern was expressed by this agency at the very beginning, where the car is going to go. And so when we work here, it's true, as Mr. Noriega says, we only look at discretionary actions, but we look at many, many parking garages, and we look at their, as I said, their utilization and queuing rates. And we see when it's not going to work, we see it piles up in the street. And so the owners have to come up with a different solution for how they're going to address the cars piling up on the street. And so it's not looking for a problem, it's seeing that there's a potential problem. And I'm guessing, because DOT has an enormous amount of experience reviewing reports like this from lots of the best engineers, like say from the mediocre to the best of the parking garage engineers. They're used to looking at the reports and coming to a conclusion whether they believe the reports, first of all, because that's what they'll do. They'll ask, wait a minute, your study doesn't quite take into account this, so redo the study until we see it taking this into account. And then they may conclude, well, but actually the throughput doesn't work. It may be the highest technology available, but in this context, it doesn't work, right? So, so my first thing is the idea of your own staff doing this. This is the part where my reaction is cheap is expensive. Your client I don't know if your client ever participates in these hearings, your client should hear cheap is expensive. I mean, architects are often willing to do things that they have no experience doing, and it costs the architect a fortune, and then they don't do it right, and then DOT sends it back and forth and back and forth. It would be a lot cheaper if you hired a traffic consultant who does this for breakfast, can get it done right the first time, and has a relationship with the traffic analysts at DOT and can be on the phone with them on a regular basis. I really don't recommend your client allow the cheap route because the poor architect is willing to volunteer to do something they haven't done before. So I hope that your client hears this recommendation. And then I'm going to go to Mr. Zoltan, who should have an opportunity to speak on this.
Hi, members of the board. Michael Zoltan on behalf of the department. I think I actually don't have that much to say. It sounds like the board understands the department's position and what we've been through and what we've done at this point. So unless there are other questions, I don't really have anything to add.
Okay. I suppose one of the questions that was presented, which you may not know because you're not technical affairs, and maybe that somebody should have come in from technical affairs. Uh-oh, we lost Mr. Zoltan, I think. Just 1 second. Can you hear?
I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, and you may not be able to answer because there's nobody from TA on the line, but so DOB is reaching out to DOT, which is the logical supportive agency for this question. The question was from the architect was whether there would be another agency who then gets involved as well. It hasn't been BSA's experience that another agency besides DOT gets involved in traffic questions. So that's my question to you.
So at this point, I don't think there was anyone else. I mean, if we get some sort of queuing analysis depending on what it shows, it may point out to some issues, but I don't think there was. I know there was, and one of the issues that was raised during the meetings, and it may have been addressed. I did not attend the meetings. We decided to keep them as applicant and tech affairs only because they are the experts in this. Was an FD&Y issue about some of the stackers. I think that may have been addressed already, or will be addressed. Mr. Duranzo was at the meetings, obviously, and would know about that. But that's the only other agency that I can think of as tying into the project at this point.
Right. Yes, we already have something from fire department. Fire department always reviews the mechanical parking systems. That's what they do. So.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for the? Okay. Commissioners. Say again. Sheta.
Sheta had his hand up. I don't know if you want to go in order,
Yeah,
but.
No, we can't. I don't see it. Go ahead, Commissioner Sheta. I don't see it on my
Yeah,
screen.
thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention something that you already mentioned regarding the idea of the moving target. I believe when this case started before us, I did hear from the applicant that they weren't able to get one meeting for a long time with the DOB. I believe since we started, they got more than 20 meetings. So I believe that the speed of the moving target has listened significantly. If you want to stabilize this moving target, I believe this is what you should do. Get this traffic analysis done by a traffic professional. Have him, before doing this traffic analysis, have a conversation with DOT, discuss with them what they are looking for in this traffic analysis exactly. Make sure that he's gonna do what they are looking for, get it done, submit it, and if the conclusion or the outcome of this study that there is no issue, I believe the position of the DOB at that time would be totally different from what we're seeing now. I would like to get a comment from DOB on that. But if there is something in that traffic study that need to be done, I believe it's the benefit of the applicant, the project, DOB, the neighborhood, the public, to get this thing done and done right. And I believe we shouldn't be talking more than that about this case.
Yes, agree. And I want to say, so again, I don't know whether this ever happened because we don't see that on the communications, but the recommendation, the last two hearings, was that this would have gone along much quicker if there had been one of the several, there are not many parking garage specialists who work in the city. We see them regularly at this board. They have very tight relationships with DOT in the sense that they can make a phone call in a second and they get answered and they speak each other's language and so on. This would have moved on a lot more quickly had one of those consultants been involved in this, it seems to me. And it seems that one of them should be the ones who are doing the traffic study. And though this may be in Mr. Dioranzo's position, the highest form of technology and so on, it may not be in terms of the city's experience with using this system or something like that. And those specialists are the ones who do this all the time. And we see often in our cases a proposal to use a piece of equipment that never ends up moving forward because of something about, New York and its regulations and so on. And so that kind of equipment ends up being abandoned and they use a different kind of equipment. So you shouldn't assume just because you have a nice brochure and a salesperson showed you this fantastic thing that works in Japan. We have never once seen one of the Japanese systems be installed in New York. So, and there's probably, a series of strange reasons why DOB or fire department or whoever hasn't been open to that system, but trying out something new isn't necessarily the way to the route to the quickest solution. So that's just general recommendation. Okay, so let's go to the public then.
Can we get a statement from DOB on what I said? If the applicant prepare that traffic analysis, their DOT requirements, and he submits to DOT, and the feedback comes that, okay, no issue. Are you aware of any other outstanding issue that need to be addressed other than that traffic piling thing?
So in terms of the safety concern that we have about the queuing, the entire subject of this case, I think that would resolve it. There may be some other neatening, drawing things that need to be addressed at the borough level. I think that was in the letter from Tech Affairs. And I think there's still maybe something about the stackers that needs to be addressed.
With fire department.
That may have been addressed, but something within DOB with OTCR regarding the stackers.
Oh, OTCR is
Yeah.
not the same as fire department. Yeah, Mr. DiOronzo, go ahead.
That's OTCR is mandatory. That's not even a question. Every time you do a mechanical stacker, you have to do OTCR. So,
Okay.
Mr. Zoltan, just please read the letter from TA so you'll be informed.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I think he's referring to that letter actually. So, okay. Okay, then, so let's go to the public. And then we have to figure out what to do.
Okay, the application we are currently discussing is 2019-190A 40-17 28th Avenue, Queens. If you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 921-0544-0892. And the passcode, should you need it, is 598448. If you're calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you are already in the Zoom room, please raise your Zoom hand.
Thank you, Tony. Okay. Okay, while we wait on this, so we sort of have, it seems like the majority of the commissioners want to close this, but I have a question about, but at the same time, or let's say on my side of it, I would like to close this because we've been at this long enough, but at the same time, I do see that the BSA has served a purpose and in at least being oversight, that, you know, you're supposed to have a meeting every week. Where's your meeting every week? That kind of thing. And I know it's not really our job, but it's kind of more like I'm sympathetic to the issue. And it does seem like what the BSA did, instructed DOB to do, was helpful. On the other hand, I'm not interested in staying in the game here, if we want to call it a game, if the applicant is not responsive immediately to the DOT's request. And I'm particularly not sympathetic if the applicant's, let's say, appellant's counsel keeps putting on this argument that it shouldn't have to, it's as of right, the administrative code doesn't require this, et cetera, et cetera. I think the board is very clear. The DOB has, the BSA has opined on DOB's authority, and we shouldn't be hearing this argument anymore or getting letters from counsel about how that's not right. Instead, the only condition of sort of staying in this, from my perspective, would be just as oversight to say, where's your meeting of this week and that week and that week. Otherwise, otherwise I don't agree to stay in. So I don't see anybody calling in on this, so we can go back to the full screen. So I kind of would like other commissioners' comments on that, because that's just so, Vice Chair Shanda, if you would comment on that.
Honestly, I really think there really is not, I I'm not sure how much value added there is with being in front of us. I think the marching order has been given by the board. Both the applicant and DOB is fully aware of it, and they're working towards it. I wish the process had started earlier and saved Mr. Geronzo and his client much of time and aggravation. Be that as it may, it's moving. And as Madam Chair, you pointed out, cheap is expensive. I agree with you there. And I think way to resolve it is through that. And I do agree with you, and we all had shared your concern, was that there's too much happening on a small site. And that is raising the concern. Typically, you see 150 as of right parking garage that are laid in a much more sprawling space. So the issue of queuing and all of those things do not become that much of a concern. Here, you're relying on multiple sources of travel modes and directions to get the vehicles out of the way, with so much of other activities going on. So I think the concerns are very valid, and DOT would be the right source to address those concerns, and then they should work it out. I will be open to whatever other board members say, but I think we should close it. But I'm open to whatever suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ollie Brown.
I think that staying open actually serves the same purpose as closing, because we're staying open with the idea that we are supportive of DOB's efforts, which really puts the ball in the appellant's court. And if we close, we are going to close stating our support for DOB's efforts, which puts the ball in the appellant's court as well. So it actually might be cheaper for us to close, because then it's a clear indication to the appellant that they need to work with DOB for however long it may take them. And then they don't have to come before us and keep paying for representation.
Right, fair. Okay, Commissioner Shetta.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we said what we want to say. My thinking is to close and put it for a decision after asking the applicant how much time he needs to prepare that study. And I would say make the decision date 2 to 4 weeks after the submission of that traffic study to DOB and DOT. At least we get some sort of idea about how this so-called moving target is moving, and then vote on it. But I don't think whatever is going to happen is going to change my position on this. But just for my curiosity, I want to know how this is going to be developing.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shabeta, I appreciate everyone's comments, really.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to know whether or not the applicant would like us to keep us open if they think it would assist. While it will certainly have its financial burden to them through the representation, et cetera, but they may see that as a greater benefit to getting this finally concluded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would put it on them at this point as to whether they think it's better for us to be around, because honestly, we have determined the decision, and the question before us, we answered. If we're helpful, then we, I would be open to keeping it open. If it's just another hurdle for them, then I don't think there's any reason for us to have another hearing. So I'd like to put it on the applicant.
Right. So, but we already know the answer. The appellant would prefer that we keep it open. But I do have to say that I agree with the other commissioners that there's, especially Commissioner Otley Brown, where I don't think that there's any difference between closing it and leaving it open. Because if we close it and we continue to monitor, because, the vote is always let's say the date of the vote is always available to be reopened if there were some reason that we could think of to reopen, right? And so the closing would be based on the condition that the progress continue the way it has been with weekly meetings. And that, again, that the appellant team reach out to their client, who I really wish would participate in these hearings so that he or she can hear what our thinking is, that this should not be, that the study should not be done by, no offense, but like amateurs to this type of study. It should be done by professionals who do this regularly and have a relationship with DOT. And as Commissioner Sheta said, can immediately call DOT because they have a relationship with those people and say, what exactly do you want me to do? And then they speak that language and there's no misunderstandings and you don't end up doing counts 3 times or using the wrong EISs or the wrong EASs or other data that you're finding doing a Google search, right? So I can just see how badly this would go if it was done in-house at the architect's office, no offense. I use as an example, architects being landscape architects where all the trees die because they're not landscape architects. Okay, so I would like to make a motion. Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
I just wanted to point out one option, which is since that the appellant might want to consider, and that's requesting withdrawal instead of taking an adverse decision.
Ah, okay, that's fair. But so we could close, right? That's still allowed, right?
Yes.
In that story. Okay, yes. Okay. But then, so I do think personally that it's great for us to have on record that the Department of Buildings has the authority to manage safety. But anyway, yeah, of course, it's
Agree.
call. Yeah, go ahead.
The architect has his hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Dioronzo.
I just wanted to comfort you by saying that there will be a traffic engineer.
Great.
So, and secondly, I do like the idea. So now I would like to hear what the counsel for the client has to say, but I do prefer the idea of withdrawing instead of receiving a negative outcome. So, and I appreciate every commissioner's comment. As I said at the beginning, the project is taking the right course since BSA got involved. I did point out that the traffic analysis could have been requested by Derek Lee in 2017, if that was the issue, but let's move forward. So I don't want to burden the system, even less you, Madam Chair, the commissioners, etc. So Frank, if you want to offer your position on this, I would rather request a withdrawal. We will continue to work with TA and provide the traffic analysis. And because I think that they have expressed all their concerns and we have addressed them. By the way, there have been 4 or 5 meetings, not 20.
You mean DOT, not TA, right?
Well,
No.
the request,
Technical
the
affairs.
Okay.
Technical affairs. He doesn't.
Technical affairs requested the DOT analysis, so I'm assuming that they are our counterpart until we okay. So I was saying, now I forgot what I was saying, but anyway, so I would like to ask Frank Noriega if he is in agreement with simply requesting a withdrawal. And because I was saying that technical affair, we addressed everything technical affairs has had to say in the course of, I don't remember if there were 4 or 5 meetings with several further communications via email. And so the only outstanding item here is the traffic analysis. If we are all aware and we know that, that there are no surprises around the corner, as I said, I don't want to burden the system or anyone present at this meeting with further involvement of BSA, as long as Frank Noriega is telling me that a withdrawal is a good course of action.
Okay, so what I would like to suggest is, since withdrawals aren't done on the spot, we can still close, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, Mr. Steinhaus. But what we could do is close and then, and set it for a decision date, and then you have time to decide, and then you could submit a withdrawal letter at any time. That's normally how it's done. I'm not aware of withdrawals being done kind of in front of our eyes like this.
No.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, I would just agree with that. I think there are some discussions that we need to have offline with the client before making any sort of decision like that. So if we are going to do a withdrawal, it will be submitted formally after this hearing.
Okay, great. All
Okay,
right.
I would just point out that under the board's rules, withdrawal without prejudice after closing needs to have a statement of for good cause only, but the board can obviously reopen as well.
Okay, so in other words, open and then accept the withdrawal and then close like that.
Yeah.
So we would reopen. Okay, so we'll keep that in mind, because I don't really see why this has to be with prejudice, right? So, okay.
Mr. Duranzo, did you?
I
you
just
just-
wanted, no, I simply, thank you so much. Sorry, then I lowered my hand. But I just wanted to say that what you just said, Madam Chair, makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, I'm an architect, not an attorney. So, but the last process you outlined with the opportunity to withdraw before the next date, I think makes logical sense to me as an architect. I don't know.
Okay. Fine, okay.
Okay, so do you want to make the motion now?
Yes, okay, so thank you, everyone, appreciate it. Interesting case, all right. Motion's closed then.
Chair Perlmutter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Oh, and we
Okay.
forgot to discuss, it's closed, but we're allowed to discuss timing. I just need to know how much time to submit the study. Go ahead.
Antonio, I think that's more of a question for you. And
I would say that by the time professional is engaged and we obtain relevant comments from the DOT, it'll take at least 90 to 120 days. So I would say 120 days.
Mhm. Okay.
All righty.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
thank you.
SOC calendar, the next item is continued hearing 13-599-76BZ 7202 72nd Place, Queens.
Hi, I'm Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik PC. I should have Mr. Mink. It's the only person who should be joining me. I don't know if you see him. Oh, there he is. I see him.
Yes, Jeff Mink.
Okay, ready?
Mhm.
Raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik PC. I think you had one question, which I'm going to give to Mr. Mink about the benches in the side yard.
Mhm.
Mr. Mink.
Hello. Good morning, Madam Chairperson and commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to address you and address your point. Yeah, there are about 3 picnic tables in the back alleyway behind the building, and strictly for the convenience and enjoyment of our staff at lunchtime, if they choose to sit outside and enjoy some fresh air and sunshine. That's what they do. There is absolutely no production or any work that occurs at those tables other than the consumption of food. That's basically it. Certainly painting that wall that faces our building. Yeah, I think that's certainly reasonable, and that certainly will be done.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right. I don't think there was anything else. We appreciate very much, Mr. Mink, your cleaning up the site to the extent it needed cleaning up. And Ms. Fullader, your photo essay, very nicely done. Might use that as a standard. So if we could figure out how to make that a standard. With your permission, of course, right? We'll say this is what a photo essay should look like. Okay.
Just going to nod.
All right, so then let's go to the public.
Yes, the case we are currently discussing is 599-76BZ 7002 72nd Place, Queens. Should you wish to call in to discuss, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 921-0544-0892. Passcode is 598448 should you need it. And to speak, it is raise *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute to speak. And if you're in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand.
Okay, so while we wait to see whether anyone wants to raise their hand who's already in the Zoom room, phone callers, *9 to raise your Zoom hand. I'd like to close this, but I'd like you to submit a photo of the painted wall. And so that low block wall, and how much time to actually paint it and give us a photo.
Okay, I actually have the contractor around to do some additional work, but at the moment, it's everyone is rushing to paint, and with the weather being nice, he's a little bit difficult to nail down. But I'll certainly have it done, and I would think within 60 days. I'd like to say sooner, but I can't commit for him. Within 60 days, we can certainly have that wall, a fresh coat of paint on that wall, and take care of that.
Okay, so how about this? Because we trust you. And
Thank you.
Good guy. I can verify. He's a really good guy.
I think the commissioners will agree. If we put this on for decision earlier, because we're moving into a summer calendar where we're running out of hearing dates, and I don't want you to wait until September or something for a vote. If we put this on for earlier than 60 days and it's not painted yet, we'll just make a condition of the approval that you paint out. Okay, so do what you can to do it before we set this decision date. And if you can't, we'll make it a condition.
Okay.
All right. So everybody okay with that? Yes. All the commissioners are nodding in agreement. So I would like to therefore make a motion to close.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta.
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay, this is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I just want one final statement. I'd like to thank you for your fair and appropriate questions and directions from our community. As a member of the community, we depend upon you to not only safeguard the people who live there, but also the companies that exist there. And I applaud your effort. Thank you very much, and have a great summer.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 14, 21-10BZ, 2801 Roebling Avenue, the Bronx.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Frederick A. Becker.
Okay. Good morning.
You have Mr. Stamuli with you?
Yes, he may or may not speak.
Okay, so could you unmute yourself, Mr. Stamuli?
I called back. Excuse me, go ahead.
Mr. Stamuli, could you unmute yourself, please?
He's not going to speak unless necessary. So at the moment,
Okay, raise your right hand, Fred. I'm sorry, Mr. Becker. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Frederick A. Becker. Again, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. We attended your review session, Zoom-wise. First, I have to give full credit to Jella for the language on the sign, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So you can, all props go to her.
Okay,
Um,
Jella, we didn't know that you knew it wasn't a radio, but it's called a sound system.
that's what youth will do for you at this point. But anyway, it's, as I say, I asked her and she gave me the language, so there you go. With regard to the two issues seem to be primarily the noise and the lumen spread. With the noise, we understand you want a nighttime reading, so we will go back with a nighttime reading. Is there any particular hour? Remember, these are, I mean, people who are going out, so if we do 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or do you want 1 o'clock?
You know what, your analysts know when the ambient levels go down because they've done so many of these. Whenever the beginning of the ambient levels going down based on their experience is fine, because I know these are consultants who are making them go out at 1 in the morning. It's kind of.
Fine. I will also provide a little clarification on that issue about the level at 10. That's, excuse me, mentioned in the final page of the report. So we'll hope that.
And actually, you know, I don't real, sometimes we see these sound meters that are just set up and left there. So in other words, you don't have to stand there at 1 in the morning. So if it's something like that, where they just put the meter in place and they have it on a 4-hour something or other, that's good too. Whatever it is, I'm not expecting you to send a consultant there at 1 in the morning. So I just think whatever sort of standard in the industry for getting late night readings.
Okay, I mean, the issue when they went to the first time was they did it at 2 foot, 2, 4, 6, 8 intervals. Obviously, if they leave it, they can't leave it in the middle of the drive-through. So just to be aware.
Right. So maybe, okay, I see. But you know what? The other part of it is, here's my other question. Ambient levels must be sort of known, right, in these neighborhoods. There must have been other studies and things like that. You would think that the city in general, where there's whatever kind of traffic activity, the ambient levels drop down to something or other after, just to throw out a time, after 11 p.m. So they could even base this on a typical area and ambient, and then knowing that the output is 60 something decibels, what happens? Like, does the fence, or is the receptor therefore only the wall, or is the receptor the second floor balcony? It seems like you might be able to do this with modeling based on known information. If ambient is in the 60s in the middle of the day, it must be typical that ambient goes down to, just to throw out a number because I don't know, 50 something in the evening.
I understand all that. I would submit that unlike your average avenue or street, this is next to the Hutchinson River Parkway, which has traffic 24/7. So I'm not sure that ambient will actually change at any time during the day, but these are all issues I'll raise with I understand the board's concerns. These are issues raised. I understand. We know where to go with this.
Okay, great.
Okay. With regard to the light study, we did mention in the discussion of the light study on page 2 of our submission, item 9, we actually have ordered new poles, new lower poles.
Okay.
So that which are in accordance with the recommendations of Bowler. When they did their studies, they told us that if you do X, it should bring it down to 0. So we have ordered the poles. The poles are in shipment now. They should be installed relatively soon, at which point it should achieve the 0.
Okay, but so the 0 was measured at the top of the fence, right? So
no, they actually measured it. The 0 was measured. They went into the driveway next door because you can see where it is on the noise study, on the light study, excuse me, the light study.
They went to the driveway next door, but that's okay. I'm not sure. So please is Bowler on the phone with you?
No.
No, okay. For future use, when you have these studies, bring the engineer, because we often have engineering questions. So I guess my question is simply, is the light spread from those poles, whatever height they are, sufficient to reach to the roof of that second floor setback, right?
So the light poles are currently approximately 30 feet tall. We are looking at replacing them with light poles approximately 10 feet tall with shields.
Okay.
So that should get rid of, that should illuminate and eliminate, or vice versa, the
That
light spread that's going onto the second floor, because these effectively will be below the second floor.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense, right, Commissioner Sheta? That makes sense. If the poles are 10.
I believe if the pool is shorter than the elevation where this terrace in the back is, I believe the chance to like shed significant light to the adjacent properties is very low.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you, Mr. Becker. That makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
So we, as I mentioned, this was on the 19th, as you had mentioned, they are in shipment. They will be installed upon shipment. So they should be installed within the next few weeks approximately.
Okay, great.
And the only other item was, you saw that this is the same Burger King that was here before you approximately 3 or 4 years ago. 0 complaints then, 0 complaints now. The landscaping, we did some additional landscaping in the rear since we last spoke. I mean, short of putting up a solid line of arborvitae, we're not getting any issues. We have slatting in the fence. We'd submit that we should be okay.
Yeah, in addition, other than that little corner, which wouldn't do anything, there's no place to put landscaping. So, you know, to put landscaping along the residential boundaries would have had to have been done when the site was being planned. Right. 0 place for it to go. So.
Correct.
Okay.
So I think that addressed the issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the public then.
The case we are currently discussing is 21-10BZ, 2801 Roebling Avenue, the Bronx. Should you wish to call in to discuss, is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 921-0544-08992. And the passcode, should you need it, is 598448. If you wish to speak, please press *9 to raise your, *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute to speak. If you are in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand.
Right, and there's only one phone number in the Zoom room, *9 to raise your Zoom hand on this application. Okay, I don't know who I think that was Bowler who prepared the lumen study. It's a really well done study in the sense that the notations for the light levels are really, really clear right there on the study. I thought it was really well done. So in terms of the graphics, I mean, I'm basically talking about graphics and the clarity of graphics. Okay, so how much time then? So we're talking about really the installation of the lighting, basically, right?
Yes.
And all right, so within the next few weeks, I'm trying to get us back in before the end of the summer. Is the point.
Right.
Do you just want to reiterate, Madam Chair, about the restriction, the condition on the trash pickup?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the trash pickup was described at,
8 a.m. to 9 p.m., I believe.
Yeah.
And you want a condition not earlier than 7 a.m. and no later than 9?
Yeah, you know what, I deleted that.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Huh, I had that and it covered by something. Okay.
Mr. Becker,
Yes, Commissioner.
do you know how long or how much time the Bowler used to produce the lumen measurements? Like half a day, 2 hours, 6 hours?
They were, according to our discussions when we discussed the price, which was very high, they were there basically all day long.
Okay.
We calculated it out that they would basically be there from like 9 to 5. It was a full day worth of time that they were spending there.
You know, I think,
Or a full evening. I should say a full evening. It was quite a period of time because we calculated how much it would cost, which was very expensive.
so we're trying, so you know, what's really strange about what's happening now is the BSA has required lumen spread diagrams for almost as long as we go back and read the resolution since there were light meters, which is really a long time, right? But all of a sudden, they're getting really expensive. And we don't understand why. It's like a new industry of expensive lumen spread diagrams. So we're investigating an alternative approach, which one of our applicants is testing in the field for us, right? So more on that, because we have heard that these are coming out at crazy estimate levels, which was not the goal. And since we've been asking for these for, I don't know if the number is decades, but a very long, probably borders on decades. So yeah, so more to follow, and we will let everyone know as soon as we know if that alternative works, in which case your clients won't be tortured by unnecessary expenses. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I also, Commissioner Shetta, I'm thinking we should probably have a sort of a meeting with these kind of consultants to talk about how they conduct these things, so we can find out why it takes them an entire day to what you did in would you do it in an hour? Yeah, okay. So Commissioner Shetta actually conducted one of these studies himself.
That actually, I went to that site and I took some readings quickly with my phone. I don't have a meter,
Yeah.
but like I said before, I didn't measure every single point, get a spray paint and mark it on the ground. I didn't do that.
Right.
That is part of the expense. If you look at the study, you'll notice that they plotted like every 10 feet, give or take, and given the size of the coverage, that's how it just get into the expense.
That's what we've learned. So we're going to give different instructions so that it's not somebody spray painting dots all over us.
Right.
You don't need to get a surveyor to do a luminous spray diagram.
No, I understand, but in other words, they're going the same way you're doing a noise study, 2, 4, 6, 8 feet. You know, if you did it, at 8 feet, called it a day. Or if you said, okay, do this grid here, we're concerned only at points A, B, and C, that might reduce it. This is my understanding. This is a discussion at this point in time that would narrow their focus.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, that's given plenty of time for someone to call in. So, so what are we thinking then?
Well, the issue is we can probably have the polls and the noise information to you within 30 days. So
Okay.
the question is, can you close with the items to be submitted? And then we would have a June, I guess, more like a July hearing or something.
Is everyone okay with that? We close and we're just getting confirmation that the lighting is improved, right? Okay, yeah. So you think 30 days?
I think 30 days will do it, yes.
Okay,
So we would need revised plan photographs?
yeah. No, it's, of the photographs with the
New light poles.
with the new lights and just confirmation I would say confirmation at the top of the fence. And that's all. Confirmation at the top of the fence that you achieved 0.
Okay.
Okay. And when yeah. Okay, great. All right, thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to close. Understood what we need to do?
Yes, I do.
All right. So a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Okay, this application is closed.
All right, so since it's 11:54, before we go on to the next case, let's take a 10-minute break.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So back at 12:05. Okay.
We ready? Proceed, Madam Chair? Oh, we're not yet. You're on mute.
Right, sorry. We have Commissioner Sheta, can you come back? There we go. No. Well, we have a quorum. Let's get started.
I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Okay, good.
We're on? Are we recording live? Okay. New cases, item number 15, 28279 BZ, 840 Richmond Avenue, Staten Island.
Mr. Businelli's on already.
Mr. Businelli, anyone with you?
No.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record and proceed.
David Businelli, Studio 16 Architecture for the owner.
Okay. Did you hear our review session?
Yes, we did. Yes. And I would like to address the comments.
Okay.
As far as the lot being close to vehicles and pedestrians, as stated, we will add that to our statement and make sure that that is part of the resolution.
Okay, no,
Going
if
forward.
it's not that, you need to have some method for doing it, a chain,
Right. Yeah. Will we make sure that we have that closed? Will we be, whether it be a chain or a swinging gate or whatever the case may be?
okay, so the drawings need to show that.
Right. We'll update the drawings. Yes, we will.
Okay,
As for the statement of facts, I lost you on the section of the rules that needed to be changed.
yeah, so your reference to the waiver request, which
Right.
is similar to another one of your applications, it should be 1-07.3 B3 Roman numeral 2, little 2.
Was that B3 or C3?
B like boy, 3, Roman numerette 3.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But so, we'd also like proof of continuous use. And then
Yes.
statement, which really normally is just a couple of sentences of what would happen if you had to close this business. The
Right.
series
Okay.
result.
Right.
Okay,
We will take care of that.
okay.
As for the 1989 resolution, my apologies. I guess I got lost with all the PDF files, but we will get that to you.
Okay.
Right. We will key the photos to the plans, and we will illustrate the conditions as stated in the last resolution. I think that we did, though, because they were quite simple. The landscaping is illustrated, and we will also address the dimensions of the planting beds and the plants. There, I know there's a little sparse. Some plants have died
Yeah.
over the years, and we'll get them replaced.
Okay, so, if you look at the previously approved set of drawings, they were much more detailed than the drawings you submitted. All the new submissions have to be at least as detailed as the previously approved set. And then any other issues that we bring up have to be included as well.
Okay, we'll take a look at the old set and make sure that it matches and is at least as detailed, if not more.
Okay.
Right. The lighting analysis will be done. We'll get the lumen study done. And hopefully that'll be okay without having to swap out the pole fixtures, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I did note that one of the commissioners mentioned the state of the fences. Those will be repaired.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, and the bumpers that are out of place and or broken will be replaced.
Okay.
And moved back into alignment. We will get updated photos done once all this other work is done. Because there may be some plants that we have to put in, so we're going to need to address that. As I stated before, the dimensions of the landscape areas will be on the plan. And we will address the attended parking.
Okay, great. So those were it, I think, right, everyone? Okay, then, so let's go to the public.
Okay, the case that we are currently discussing is 28279 BZ. This is for a property at 840 Richmond Avenue, Staten Island. If you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. The Zoom webinar ID number is 921-0544-0892. The passcode should be required is 598448. When you call in, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute to speak. If you are in the Zoom room already, please raise your hand to speak. I think *9 for the Zoom hand.
So, Mr. Busanelli, how much time to do this? To get us,
I think the biggest lead time is going to be the lumen study. So I would say, because I have one going on for a case that's upcoming today, and he's already been on it 3 weeks and he hasn't gotten to it yet, the consultant. So I'm thinking we're going to need at least 30 days.
30 days. Okay. All right. So, there's one person who's called in to our in our waiting room. Last 3 digits 472. If you'd like to speak on this application, please raise your Zoom hand by *9. This is 840 Richmond Avenue in Staten Island. Okay. All right. Other than that, no one has called in. So I think 30 days to submit. And thank you very much for calling in on this. We'll let you know when the next hearing date is based on your submission date. Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this concludes the public hearing for May 10th, 2021, 10 a.m. session. We shall resume at 2 p.m. with the review session and public hearing.
Thank you, everyone.